In our world lead, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was asked in an interview with CBS's Charlie Rose how he feels about being called a butcher and killing his own people.
When you have a doctor who cut the leg to prevent the patient from the gangrene, if you have to, we don't call him butcher, we call him a doctor. And I thank him for saving the lives.
The gangrene in that metaphor is, of course, the rebellion in Syria. The rebels are men that Assad describes as terrorists. Let's talk to a representative for the opposition. Najib Ghadbian is Syrian coalition's special representative to the U.S. He meets regularly with the White House, National Security Council, and State Department. He supports a democratic Syria. Mr. Ghadbian, thanks so much for being here. First of all, I'd like you to respond directly to what Mr. Assad said, referring to the opposition as gangrene. While obviously the moderate rebels, ones that have been vetted, I wouldn't, you don't have to defend them. A lot of Americans see videos of some of the elements in Syria that are pretty brutal of the rebels. We saw one commander ripping out the heart or some sort of inside part of a Syrian regime soldier. We've seen executions in videos. How do you assuage these concerns of the American people that some of the rebels seem to be quite bad guys?
Well, I would start by saying, yes, there are some bad apples among the rebels. But the gangrene, the subject of the gangrene has been 120,000 Syrians killed by this regime, 7 million displaced or made into refugees, 1.2 million houses destroyed by the Assad regime. This is a regime that responded to legitimate demands of Syrians, who started peacefully, for freedom, dignity, and equal opportunity, from day one killing them with snipers, into escalating to the point of using Scud, aircraft, Air Force, and now chemical weapons.
No question about that in terms of the response to peaceful demonstrations. But when you talk about the bad apples, how many bad apples are we talking about?
It's a very small percentage. Even today, the estimate by the Free Syrian Army, less than 6% of those fighters, 160,000, are extremists. Extremists that they espouse the kind of ideology that we don't subscribe to. They want an Islamic State, which is something different from the vision of the coalition and the SMC.
Let's talk about this third way proposed today offhandedly by Secretary Kerry about, hypothetically, if Assad were to give his chemical weapons to the international community, maybe he could avoid a military strike. Now the Russians and the Syrian government are saying, oh, let's talk about this. What do you think?
Well, let's start by making sure that we don't trust the regime nor the Russians when it comes to that. They want to buy more time to engage in more killing. Number two, at the top of any political solution now or proposal should be accountability for those who committed the crimes of the use of chemical weapons. Number three, it should be a package of a political settlement that would lead to democratic transition like Geneva espouses. And so I think what's really important is that it's only when this administration decided to bring the credible threat of the use of force that they start to talk sense. Before that, they did not believe in a political solution. And that's why we believe that the House, Congress, must support the President in its effort, in fact, to continue to put that use of force on the table.
Let's talk about just what happens if the U.S. Attack goes on. It happens. Let's say some of these military installations are taken out. What happens next? Game it out for us. How do we know that the situation in Syria doesn't get even more bloody?
Well, it's been a war situation for 2.5 years. The Assad lost control of more than 60% of the land. He's fighting the rebel on the suburb of Damascus. This is why he used chemical weapons, because he could not defeat them by conventional means. So the country is already in the most chaotic situation. This strike, I think, is going to lead to the end of this war. There will be a transition plan coordinated between the core friends of Syria, the 11 countries, and the Free Syrian Army and the coalition, in order not to make sure there's no void, there's no vacuum, that there are local council, revolutionary, in fact, committees on the ground to fill in this vacuum. We might need the help of the international community. We might need peacekeeping forces. All of that, we're open to it. But I think it's the U.S. intervention that's going to end this war.
Do you think President Obama should order a military strike even if Congress says no?
I believe so, but it would make a lot of sense for Congress to support the President. This is not the time to get into a domestic, in fact, fighting over a lot of issues. This is the time for Congress to show unity behind the President on a cause which serves U.S. national interest and, in fact, does correspond to U.S. values in promoting freedom and democracy in Syria.
All right, Najib Ghadbian, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your views.
Thank you for having me.